Hello again, whiskey friends. Hey, thanks for joining everybody for another whiskey review. Today we are going to highlight, I think, a brand that's catching people's attention. So I think it's really important to have some conversations about this brand overall. But we got a Nashtucky 8-year. So this is, aged and bottled in Nashville, Tennessee, but this particular one is a 8-year Kentucky bourbon. I'll speculate a little bit about the source of these, but I want to have a conversation too about this 8-year compared to a lot of the 5 years that I've tried as well. I think this Nashtucky brand's kind of a bit confusing on how everything is presented so far and where things are coming from. So at least I can give you my experiences with that so far, and then we'll review this one officially as well. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So let's get into this for today's Glen. Hey, man, I got a live wire whiskey Glen here. Cheers, Mike. Check out Live Wire Whiskey for some late night shenanigans, particularly on Sunday evenings. Sometimes we'll be on there. But let's pour it out here. Now, if my voice is a little deeper and a little raspier today, if you're noticing that, because I kind of feel it. This weekend, I went to a Guided by Voices concert. That's what GBV stands for. When you see me wearing all these GBV shirts. And I sang my heart out. And now I'm paying for it, but it's time to record some whiskey reviews. So with this one is Nashtucky, as stated off the top, Kentucky bourbon, aged and bottled in Nashville, Tennessee. It is 123.38 proof. We got to be very, very precise on that. And this one particularly was a Seelbach pick. And for those that are really, really paying attention to these type of things, it is a KY 2811. So a 2800 series is the way some people have been describing it in terms of those barrel numbers. But this is an 8-year. The ones that a lot of people are raving about, just to be careful, are the 5 years, which is a bit odd because it's like, man, everyone's raving about the 5 years. Who's talking about the 8 years? Well, I think those things are coming from different distilleries. Also recently got back from Summer Jam, which was a whiskey meetup event hosted by the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club. Cheers to Jason and Scott for that. That was a wonderful event. But during that weekend, I got to try about 4 different bottles of Nashtucky 5-year. And a lot of people claim or speculate or think that the 5-year ones are like Buffalo Trace barrels, and that they are like kind of like younger cast strength Stag Juniors even. It's like how people like to talk about it a little bit. Now, Durrell also gave me 2 samples of a 5-year Lauren Simpson picks, number 2 and number 3. So I got to try those as well. Whether I'm on board with this whole Buffalo Trace thing, I don't know. Like, there are some stereotypical profile things that I would expect from Buffalo Trace that aren't always present. Other times they are. And I'm like, oh, okay, that one I believe it. But got to try a whole bunch more at Summer Jam. So now being able to experience, gosh, what did I say there? Somewhere between 5 and 7 different single barrels of the 5-year. Oh, those are really, really, really good. Preface that with this one here. Excuse me, everybody. Which is aged 8 years. And I think it's coming from a different distillery entirely. If I were to speculate, this is 8-year Jim Beam. So with that in mind, we're going to go through the tasting notes on this one, break it down, go to the official scores. And then I have a compare I have not done yet. I want to do it live for this review here. But I've got this sample bottle left over from a Knob Creek store pick that I got on a recent vacation to Colorado. And when I drank this, I was like, oh man, that reminds me of that Nashtucky. And I want to see if that still rings true. So let's get into this one. This is the 8-year Nashtucky. Cheers, everybody. So on the nose, it is all this like creamy peanut butter mousse, I would essentially say. Like, you know how like a mousse has that like lightness and fluffiness to it. It's not dense, right? Like, but it's there, it's sugary, and it's very it's very potent as well. There's some darker notes there, like a black pepper, nice oak coming from that 8-year. If I were to get into the fruits, I'm still looking at something in like the stone fruit range, maybe a darker plum type of a thing. And then one thing I do find interesting about the tail end of the nose, sometimes I pick up root beer on various bourbons. This one is actually more like a cream soda, like the A&W cream soda, or maybe even the Barks cream soda might be more accurate there. But more of a cream soda um, really starts to highlight the vanilla once you get over the age factor and get beyond that 8 years in the oak. All right. Well, that's it for the nose. Let's get into the taste. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining me this far. Mm, man, one thing I'll say about this thing, man, it is crushable. This is a crushable bottle. Up front, nice creamy mouthfeel. I wouldn't call this one like overly oily or overly coating, but it is nice and creamy. There's essentially this like cinnamon vanilla ice cream going on up front, even on like a waffle cone. So initially, it does give you a lot of flavors. Let's get into mid palate. I will say mid palate, the oak can be a bit astringent and drying, so you got to be careful there. That peanut butter mousse really starts coming through, and maybe it's even like a peanut butter brittle, and then there's some chocolate chips in there as well. So either the peanut butter mousse with chocolate chips in it, or a peanut butter brittle with chocolate chips kind of melted on top, something like that. Ah. Now the finish is what probably cost this thing some points on the end too. The finish does drop off quite a bit. There isn't really a long finish here. And once again, it's kind of those same flavors again, the creamy peanut butter and a bit of that vanilla ice cream that I was highlighting at the top. Um, really do like the oak though. The oak on the finish does stand out, and it's a nice note. That's the thing that's lingering right now. Hmm. One more sip. Let's see if I find anything else. Now a bit of that back black pepper that I saw on the nose, that's emerging on the palate. Yeah, I think that's it. All right. Let's get into the official scores of this one. Now, one thing I didn't say off the top, and that'll make a whole lot of sense when I pull up the scores. This retail would be $150. Now, Sealbox sometimes does this case deal where you can buy three, get three free. So I was actually able to get these at essentially $75 a piece. I ordered a whole case of just these and shared them out with a whole bunch of people as well who are interested in trying it. So kind of have that in context that retails 150. I got this for 75. Messes with my calculus a little bit, but it is reflected in the scores here at retail. So here on the site, we do have a 3-tier scoring system, a flavor score, an experience score, and a value score. Whole bunch of metrics behind the scenes in those categories, but this is a good way of summarizing it. As I said, this is a crushable bourbon. So it got 80% of the possible flavor scores. The flavors are good. The flavors that are there are good. They're not very complex. The mouthfeel, as I said, it's just creamy, but it's not really coating. The finish kind of drops off, so it's losing some points there. Ultimately, the thing that really hurt this thing in the scoring system is going to be the value then. When you're talking about an 8-year product for $150, you do expect something more than what this one is giving. But at $75, that one I was perfectly okay with it. Can crush the pick, and move on. So at the end of the day, this got a 77 out of 100. Recommend, I put a 7 out of 10 only because if I am correct on the fact that this is if it is a Jim Beam barrel, there's other examples of Jim Beam that we could highlight that are cheaper as well. So what am I really recommending with this particular one other than the getting to know this brand in particular and what they have to offer with some of the intrigue that's going around. So do I plan to buy another? Maybe. I think it would have to be a pick of someone I know, maybe if I can get a sample of it before I buy it. So I haven't completely closed the door on the potential of what at least the 8-year line has in store, but this one didn't necessarily make me want to double down and think that I'm ever going to actually invest in another 8-year, if that makes sense. So let me go on for just one more minute here. I want to compare this to what was in the sample bottle because I've been waiting to do this and I figured I could do it live with everybody. So I'm going to pour in the Scotch Test Dummy Glen here. It's actually one of my favorite Glens. I love that design, that Spartan design. I'm going to pour a little bit of this one. Now, this was a 9-year Knob Creek pick that I got when I was in Colorado for a family vacation. This is all that exists of that bottle. Me and my brother-in-law just completely crushed it. And when I tried this, I was like, oh, that reminds me a lot of the Nashtucky pick. So we are talking about a 9-year single barrel of Knob Creek. Let's do a little comparison here because if I'm right on the profile and this actually is Jim Beam, I do think Knob Creek then is the comparison point, especially at 9 years. And then it's like, oh man, 9 years for what? $60 is usually a Knob Creek price, 60, 65 for a cast strength Knob Creek versus this one. The proof points aren't going to be too far off. So once again, the value score in the Nashtucky is really what I'm poking at, but let's see if that holds true during this comparison. Cheers, everybody. We'll wrap this up in about one more minute. All right. So first I'm smelling the Nashtucky. Now let's get into the Knob Creek. Oh, interesting. So head to head on the nose, the Nashtucky actually leans further into the peanut flavors than even the Knob Creek. The Knob Creek actually is giving me more fruit flavors and sweeter flavors by comparison, a bit brighter despite having the extra age. Leans into like vanillas and apples. Now it's still got some of the underlying similarities with the peanut, but yeah, the Knob Creek comes across as a brighter bourbon, even though it is a bit older. All right, let's get into the palate. Going with the Nashtucky first. Okay. So I got a flavor for that one now. Let's get into the Knob Creek. Oh man, they're so similar on the palate. Ooh, the Knob Creek though. Tell you what, Nashtucky's winning this head to head. I like this Knob Creek pick quite a bit, but there's some spikiness with it head to head. I'm gonna go in for another sip of this Knob Creek. Yeah, even though it would be technically a little older, the 8-year Nashtucky is extremely darker in the profile. The vanillas really shine through on the Knob Creek. Doing it head to head and tasting them back to back, the Knob Creek even does feel a little put together, a little spikier. Keep in mind, this is just some random store in Colorado, not a pick that I'm advocating for or anything. But when I tried it, it reminded me of the Nashtucky, so I wanted to do those head to head. If I were to choose between these, man, especially at the $75 mark, the Nashtucky is better than this Knob Creek, so that's good. So I can't hammer on the value quite as much, at least in terms of what I paid. But if I'm comparing $65 to $150, it's not giving me twice as much value. So be careful on these at the price. I guess that's the main thing. Keep an eye out for deals, such as the one that I highlighted on Seelbach. But I think ultimately you're looking at a very, very crushable bourbon. Just be careful about the price. And at least with this comparison, it does edge out against a Knob Creek 9-year. Well, thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let me know in the comments what your experiences have been with the Nashtucky brand so far, either the 5 years or the 8 years. Have you liked them? What was the price you paid? All of those type of things. Let the community know what you're thinking. The more information that's out there, the more we can all learn from each other. Thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. I'll catch you on the next whiskey review. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have